soon. Have your seats. So today, dear participants, we will be discussing about national capacity building in the LDCs for accelerated climate action. This is an extremely important topic, you know, because as a climate finance negotiator, I always argue that before even flow of money, we need capacities, both at the individual and institutional level. Otherwise, money in flow will not do the service that we expect for. So, and we have, myself and Salim have a number of co-authored publications, including a book on capacity building, Article 11 of the Paris Agreement, published by Routledge from London. So, we have done a review of the initial INDCs, and about 70% of the parties submitted NDCs suggested for capacity building as a precondition for implementation of the NDCs. This request is more strong than even the need for climate finance. So you can imagine, and as I argue that we need to build three types of capacities broadly. One is to understand climate change in all its dimensions, its impacts and the resulting vulnerabilities, as well as vulnerability assessments. Okay, so based on this understanding and assessments, the second category of capacity building we need is about developing plans, programs, strategies, policies to address these vulnerabilities. Okay, and the third type of capacity is the negotiations that we are here for, you know, because climate change is inherently global. And how that global dynamics play out and how we, the LDCs, are victims of that global, you know, emissions, you know, by major emitters. So these are the three types of capacities broadly that in the LDCs we need. We are the least contributor to the problem, but the front line of victims, as kind of innocent victims, what we call. So with these initial remarks, let me invite our distinguished speakers and panelists to the podium. First, Hafiz Khan, our compatriot, a very active negotiator, co-coordinator of the loss and damage agenda, and he is an environmental lawyer. Please come to the stage. And then Ritu from IIED, Dr. Samia Salim, and then Professor Amadou, and also I think Janga Sadiq, Principal Manager of DAI. So these are the galaxy of speakers and panelists we have. So first let me invite Hafiz Khan for your keynote presentation. Thank you. Saifi, you also have presentation, so you may come up. Yeah? I can sit down there.
Thank you, Professor Mizana Khan. Good morning, colleagues. I do recall Salim. He might talk better than us to make us understand the needs of capacity building. Anyway, let me start. Capacity building for least developing countries is really particularly important. But why? Of course, some of the countries from least developing countries are vulnerable due to their geographical location. However, they are vulnerable due to capacity constraints. They are vulnerable due to their financial, technical resources. So LDCs are vulnerable, that is recognized throughout the UNFCCC processes. So seeds and LDCs are particularly vulnerable. Seeds vulnerable due to their geographical locations, and LDCs are vulnerable, I said, due to capacity constraints. Now we need to build up the capacities. We need to build up the capacities for all the streams for mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, means of implementations, including finance, how to access the finance, how to access the technology, and how to access also support for capacity build-up. Also very important field now, transparency. We agreed here a transparency framework at the UNFCCC processes that needs to be translated now on national level, because even LDCs are not under obligation to prepare the biannual transparency report. But it's very important. We need to prepare those reports, because we need to quantify how much money we are accessing as a climate finance. Also, I do understand it's a burden for the LDCs, but it's very important. We need to develop some sort of monitoring mechanism. How much money we are getting and how we are utilizing those resources to protect our vulnerable citizens. That's very important. Colleagues, you know, climate change impacts is a really additional burden for the LDCs, because we have the right to develop. So for our development process, impacts and vulnerabilities are an additional burden. So those burden needs to be shouldered by the developed countries. Now, I said there are every streams demands capacity. Now, as a loss and damage negotiator, rather even I'm involved with UNFCCC processes, drafting process more than a decade, but I always love to introduce myself as a community lawyer, because I'm working with vulnerable communities more than 20 years. So from my community experience, from my global policymaking processes expertise, and let me highlight the issues, particularly on loss and damage. We need to use a single lens to understand the needs. Climate change policies, it takes basically top-down approach. Here at the UNFCCC processes, we agreed on convention, we agreed on the Kyoto Protocol, finally Paris Agreement. Since it's a contemporary issue, global policy is providing guidance to take action at the national level. For example, we agreed here for NDC, but NDC developed by the national governments. We agreed for the NAP here, but that is developed by the national government. There are so many other sectoral policies that needs to be developed by the government, that needs to be implemented by the government. So main actor actually the governments. So now this is the time after 30 years of negotiation to act at the national level. For example, you might know that there is an institution that called Warsaw International Mechanism. That's the mechanism we established back in 2013 with a broader inspiration to structure that institution very comprehensively. Then again, I do recall Salim. Colleagues, before coming to Warsaw, we had a workshop in Bellagio Center, Italy. All the G77 negotiators, lead negotiators were there. Also, we invited some experts. So we tried to understand what does it mean, the international mechanism. Then we draft a skeleton. Warsaw International Mechanism is here. There must be a policy wing. That is the executive committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism that is working now. Then second, the technical arm, that is the Santiago network we established back in COP25 in Madrid. That is here at this COP, we operationalized it. You know that we selected a host as an organization, that is UNDRR UNOPS, to some extent ICARD also IID, some research institutions are there with the UNEP project proposal. So technical arm is there. Now we established the fund and funding arrangement. That is the financial arm. Actually, that workshop supported by ICAT, Professor Salim. So you see, Salim contributed a lot to develop this mechanism. With that said, let's look at where we need the capacities. At this moment, executive committee is developing 3 technical guidelines. For example, how to assess the loss and damage, how to mainstream the migration into the NAP processes, how to assess the non-economic loss and damage. Even the executive committee works with 5 expert groups, actually 4 expert groups, and another is task force on displacement. I'm also a member of executive committee. I'm also co-chairing the task force on displacement. So I'm personally very much involved with developing these technical guides. Now challenge is, global level we are trying to develop technical guides that would be a globally standard tools, methodologies. The challenge, what is the challenge? First challenge, you need to translate these tools and methodologies considering your national circumstances. Who's gonna do it? Professor Samia is here from Bangladesh. We need to build up their capacities so that they do understand how to translate these tools and methodologies for their own countries. So we need to build up capacities, the scientific communities, research communities. Once we can develop the tools and methods, then you need to go to the field to assess. Then very important thing is to utilize the community knowledge, traditional knowledge. They know much better than Professor Samaya, right? Whenever she will go to conduct the need assessment, community would be the heart. So you need to build up the capacity of communities so that they can participate in your assessment process effectively. We do talk about the community participation, but that must be effective participation. Then if you want to ensure the effective participation of the communities, then you need to empower them. You need to build up their capacities. So communities are there. Then actually that would be led by the government agencies, right? Ministry of Environment. The relevant stakeholder from the Ministry of Environment, Disaster Management, Water Resource Management, Planning Commission. I mean, the relevant agencies should be there. Then relevant person needs to be identified. And we need to build up the policymakers' capacity building. Then CSOs, they're going to play a very important role. So you see, it should be a multi-actor partnership. It's very critically important how to utilize your expertise from the different stakeholders who are involved with this process. So policymakers, we need to build up capacity of the minister, secretary, focal points. Now, if you think about the access to technical assistance, Santiago Network is there now. They are going to hosted by UNDRR. But UNDRR only would be facilitating to catalyze the technical assistance. Then who is going to provide the technical assistance? That is OBNEs. What is OBNEs? That is the terminology we agreed. Organizations, bodies, network, and experts. So for example, for need assessment, right? We need to identify a right organization, right expert, right network. Mostly we depend on the international organizations, UN agencies. For example, IID, Ritu is here. IID can assist us, but technical needs to be provided by a local NGO, local research institution, universities, academics. So we need to identify right OBNEs from the national level. LDC should identify their own experts, their own NGOs, own research institution, their policymakers, CSOs. They can collaborate with many other institutions. Those are internationally providing support, like, for example, IID. So it's a huge process. You see, this is very critical time to act at the national level. So we need to develop very strategic plans and programs. Then third point is that we establish the fund and funding arrangement. Luckily, I acted as a transitional committee meeting for the short time from LDC group, but as an advisor throughout the year we worked. So it was very difficult to agree on this fund. You know, the transitional committee members from developing countries, they were really interested about the funding arrangement. It means existing funds relevant to disaster risk management, humanitarian regime. They wanted to accelerate it. But our position was clear. This is loss and damage fund. Okay, those existing humanitarian regime can provide supplementary guidance, but we need a fund dedicated to loss and damage. It was not so easy. We failed at transitional committee meeting 4. It was deadlock. And last moment, a TC member from French, at midnight, he requested, shall we give a try? Everybody said, no, we are tired actually. Then luckily, somehow, we agreed for another meeting in Abu Dhabi, first week of November. We came to Abu Dhabi, and co-chairs, Richard and OT, they developed a text. They put on the table, take it or leave it. Then it was a drama. There's another case. Ambassador Diana from AOCs, she's supposed to leave for airport. And she said, I accept this text. Then it was drama, all we accepted, we got the fund. That is not the case for this session. Now how to access this fund? You know, colleagues, we did not operationalize this fund. We need next 8 months after this COP to operationalize this fund. How? We invited World Bank to host this fund, operationalize this fund. You know, World Bank is going to operationalize this fund as a financial intermediary fund, FIP. This is not the first FIP for World Bank. They have many FIPs, like on education, health, even pandemic. They developed their own guidelines to operationalize those FIP in 2019. World Bank, they have their own governing body. World Bank is driven by the shareholders. World Bank runs with a business model. So how can we accept World Bank to operationalize the loss and damage fund? We are really criticized by the civil society, media. Hey guys, why did you accept the World Bank for loss and damage fund? But we did not give them blank check. If you look at the covered decision that we agreed, para 20, we agreed 11 set of conditions. For example, if one country is not member of the World Bank, you need to ensure that country can access the fund. You know, World Bank sometimes sanction countries. For example, Sudan. They got sanction from World Bank. They cannot access the fund. But Sudan is one of the most vulnerable countries. We need to ensure they can access this fund. Finally, it was direct budget support. From this point, I will go back again, capacity building. What is direct budget support? We agreed 2 set of approaches. What is trigger-based approach? For example, soon after a cyclone or flood, vulnerable communities need to access the financial resources immediately. And how can you ensure that communities is accessing money? You need very innovative governance mechanism from global to local level. That's the challenge. Second, direct budget support. So For example, we need to identify an institution at the national level, designated institution. They can access the fund, but annual budget needs to be allocated relevant ministries. For example, maybe disaster management ministries, they can receive the fund for the trigger-based approach. Now, challenges is, while we will be negotiating with World Bank next 8 months or 10 months, that time we need to go back, we need to prepare ourselves to access this fund. In many countries, I am from Bangladesh, I know, we are not able to access the adaptation fund. I know money is not there, but whatever it is, we don't have capacity to access the fund, because to develop the project, to meet the criteria is very critical. We need to hire the consultants, even external consultants, to develop the proposal. If you get proposal, accept proposal, then you will access the money. But loss and damage is different. It says programmatic approach. You need to develop a long-term, short-term programs. You need to submit those programs to the fund. They will give you seed money. Based on your need, they will give you money. Now, challenge is how to assess your needs. How to structure your national level institutions. It's not so easy to develop a long-term program on slow onset processes like sea level rise. So capacity is very important to access the technical resources available, to access the financial resources available, but capacity is needed. We need capacity also how to enhance the capacities. But in LDCs, there are so many resources now. We can collaborate South-South, but in the LDCs, you will find very competent person in the executive committee. I requested yesterday LDC coordination meeting that we need to identify a competent person who is going to be an advisory board member. We need to identify a right person who is going to be the board member of the fund and funding arrangement, because they're going to play a very important role. Then let's go back, prepare ourselves. I would like to thank all of you to hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you, Hafiz. You are absolutely right that capacity building cannot be imposed from above. It has to be homegrown. And that was the vision of Professor Salim. And that is why he developed the argument that university think tanks should be the central hub of capacity building. And he gave me the responsibility to expand this into a 200-page book. And we did it. Thank you. Now, our colleague, Saifi Iqbal, Program Coordinator of Capacity Building, will make a short presentation on what ICAD is doing in terms of capacity building. You all know that ICAD is basically a capacity building institution, as we have argued always. So, Saifi.
Thank you, Professor Mirza, and good morning to everybody. Professor, thank you for introducing me, and also thank you, Hafizul Islam Khan, for your keynote presentation. So I will not take much time. I will share a little brief, actually, what ICAD is doing over the years for capacity building. So before doing that, I just want to share about the South-South Capacity Days, so that the panelists can have the discussion aligning the core theme of the South-South Capacity Days. You can see that the South-South Capacity Days aims to focus on the persistent challenges faced by South-South cooperation initiatives that will focus on actually enhancing capacities and ways to overcome. And the second one, actually this day will showcase some best practices within the South-South cooperation framework, emphasizing example of retaining developing countries' capacities at individual, institutional, and system levels. And third, actually, Mr. Khanaf also mentions about the multi-actor partnership, so it will also focus building synergies and promoting multi-stakeholder alliances encompassing countries, international organizations, civil society organizations, academics, and private sector. So So I now want to share that what actually we have been doing in our country for capacity building. So last year we actually implemented a very important capacity building initiative that is under the NAP indices support program of GIZ, where we actually provided capacity building support to 150 government officials from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief. So we actually, first what we did some very thorough needs assessment from our government officials, and then we developed total 11 modules on that, and we covered very basic sessions like climate change impact and vulnerabilities, climate data, mainstreaming climate policies into national planning, monitoring evaluation of climate change, economics of climate change, and then also we found that some of the government officials were keen to learn about the negotiation process. We also, and some session of climate negotiation process, and what we also provided them, we provided some one-to-one mentorship so that they can have the good knowledge on climate finance and they can develop the project idea. Then we also arranged a project idea workshop where they actually presented the project idea, and we have a jury board there, and we actually selected 2 projects which was further funded by GIZ. So that was the very basic support to the government officials we were doing. And then you know that the loss and damage issue is a very hot topic now, and you know that I think our Professor Mizan sir, before my next discussion, you can please introduce our Honorable Minister.
Yes, sure. Yeah. You have finished?
No.
No, you do finish. Then.
Introduce our Honorable Minister, then I will continue.
So, dear participants, we are really honored by the presence of His Excellency, the Minister of Planning, Investment and Economic Development of Somalia, Mohammed Sheikh Farah. So we are really honored. So let us welcome. And at the end, I will request you to share your thoughts a little. Yeah, please. Okay. So, Saifi, you continue.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not take much time. So, you know that as the Loss and Damage Fund has been established, and also on the very first day, some of the countries placed some funding. So, it is, we know that high time that we have a national mechanism to address loss and damage. So far, we know that there is no national mechanism in any of the LDCs to loss and damage. So, in my country, we have a plan to okay, sorry. So in my country, we have a plan to create a multi-actor partnership platform. So what we are planning to do, we need to include some of the stakeholders like civil society, or stakeholders from civil society organizations, then private sectors, media, youth representative, government representative. So our target is that we will have a year-long workshop with all the stakeholders where they will exchange their ideas, their skills, their knowledge, so that we can develop some recommendation to develop the national mechanism. And besides this, we will also offer a number of capacity building support to all the CSOs so that they have a strong background on the very basic concept of the loss and damage. And the last one, I would like to mention that last year at COP27, Professor Salimul Haq established a platform that is actually named the Youth Platform on Loss and Damage. So what we are doing and what we will do in the upcoming years to develop capacity of the young negotiators. So under this program, what we planning, we will provide them support over the years, and we will cover every important issues like very basic concept of loss and damage mechanism, the global politics of loss and damage, the different jargons of loss and damage finance, and also we'll learn, teach them that how to follow the negotiation process. We will brief them that what are the actually findings from different sessions, different meetings of UNFCCC. So over the years, we have a plan to provide at least technical and financial support to some of the negotiators and some of the new negotiators and some of the new negotiators, so that they can build their capacity and they can actually enhance their negotiations capacity. And lastly, I would like to mention that we also, in the last few years, we also arranged some training of trainers, like last year in Nepal, where actually, just we have a network which is, we call that LUCCC network, which is least developed university consortium of climate change. Under this LUC program, we have total 15 university members. So we gathered all the members in Nepal and arranged training of trainers on mainstreaming NAP and NDC through development planning. And besides that, this year we also arranged a short course on locally led adaptation, where we actually bring some of the participants from both Asian and African countries, and we covered some theoretical discussion for first 2 days, and the last one day we brought them to a climate technology park in our country that is actually named CCDB Climate Center, where we showcase them all the adaptation technologies and mitigation technologies, and they received a very hand-on experience from that. So these are the core actually capacity building initiatives we are implementing in ICAD. And now I would like to request, and Professor Mizano also request all the panelists that what their organization actually support to build capacity of the LDC countries, and what are the struggles and hurdles actually they face off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saifi, for briefing us about what ICAD is doing in terms of capacity building. For the minister, let me introduce myself. I'm a professor at Independent University, Bangladesh, Deputy Director of ICAD. And also technical lead of LUC, what we call LDC Universities Consortium on Climate Change. So with this, let me now invite our panelist, first panelist, Ritu Vardas, who is the leader in... Okay.
Firstly, very glad to be joining this panel, because this is covering such an important issue, and a great opening, Hafiz. Really always love hearing you. Very grounded perspective, and I'm just going to build on what you mentioned. I'm not going to bore you with what IIED does, but along with ICAD, we initiated, I would say, a drive, a movement called All. Okay, so we started this, I would say, a movement called Alliance for Locally Led Transformative Action on Loss and Damage, and it was with the vision that Salim said that when the last, in the last COP, when the Loss and Damage Fund was established, he said that we can't wait for this fund to be operationalized. We all need to act on this issue right now. And with that vision, we created this multi-partner alliance, which includes delivery partner, capacity building partner, network partners, innovation partners. And by innovation partner, I really don't mean the technology innovators. I mean more the grounded innovators, the community level innovators. And with that, I'll say for us, within this initiative, the biggest expert are the ones, the most insightful experts are the ones who are at the community, who are already confronting climatic impacts, who are managing it and supporting the communities to recover from it. And as we all know that climate impacts are increasing in intensity and frequency, so we can't still continue with that same approach of creating those 5-year NDC or NAP plans. Because what is adaptation today might become maladaptation tomorrow. Year before last, IIED and ICAD came up with a series of grounded evidence on loss and damage impacts. And one case study really struck me, and that was from Urirchar in Bangladesh, where every household had been displaced minimum 3 to maximum 7 times. And it was their own, and there are plenty of these examples from Lake Chad Basin, South Sudan, and all these experiences showed that, one, climatic impacts were increasing in frequency, but also these were not isolated. These climatic impacts don't occur in isolation. It occurs on top of all the other developmental challenges that these countries are already facing. There are development deficits, so they quite often compound. So even within the same community, the climatic impact might manifest itself differently for a woman-headed household, for a disabled person, for a pregnant woman, and we've seen that. We had another research output, very grounded research output from Pakistan last year, which showed that, of course, the impact of flood was quite devastating in Pakistan. But it was the pregnant woman and disabled woman who suffered the most. And you can see that even in the most recent Afghanistan earthquake, 90% of those dead were women and children. So it means that they are vulnerable people. What we really need to understand is that how is climate impacts really manifesting itself differently for different diverse groups within the same community, and then try to develop a more comprehensive risk management plan. And then I can say that I'm not unconscious of the topic of today's discussion. But here I want to come to this fact that for us, what we really need to do is strengthen the capacities of those who are already on the ground. The community members, by providing them technology, by providing them information, when I say information, climatic information, but provided to them in a way that they can use it. They can combine it with traditional knowledge and then use it for their own planning. Because right now, what they are using the traditional knowledge in terms of predicting, the impacts of climate. But imagine if they are provided a better climatic prediction to be integrated. And we have tried that out in India. And it worked beautifully. But it only worked because the information was provided to them in a way that they could then use it and then use it for their decision making. So we do need to empower these community members, but we also need to empower the organizations, the grassroots women's organization, the other grassroots organization who support the community in this planning process. And then along with that, and what we need to do is rapid experimentation. Don't tie many of these plans down in this 5-year planning process, 7-year planning process that we typically have in NDCs and NAPs. Because these NDC and NAPs, for me, they are very powerful tools because they are formal instruments by which countries raise their demand within UNFCCC. That is where the countries say that this is our vision, this is how climatic impacts are manifesting itself, this is what we are doing with our own resources, but this is what we additionally need. So it can then be taken over within the GST framework. And Hafiz is a better expert. I'm not even very close to what he knows about these subjects. But for us, the biggest surprise was last year when we started doing the review of NDC and NAP, we figured out for all the LDC countries, only 6 countries mentioned loss and damage. Even just mentioned loss and damage. And it was only 2 or 3 countries which dealt with it in some detail. Not like it wasn't mentioned to the extent that we would have expected. And that is why that capacity building, what Hafiz was mentioning, I'm not going to repeat it, is really, really important. Because when you go to a country and you want to say, tell them that we want to work on loss and damage, we want to support practical solutions of loss and damage, and they always direct us towards the person who leads on the negotiation. So, that grounded, and that's what Salim, when we started this practical solutions to loss and damage 4 years back, Salim said that we really need to clarify this concept of loss and damage. We need to, because right now loss and damage is not an issue which has to remain within the domain of Ministry of Environment and Forest and countries. It has become it has to be mainstream. It has become a health issue, it's become a migration issue, agriculture issue. You name a ministry, you name a department, and it has become an issue for that ministry. So that is one. You really need to build the basic understanding and concepts. Second, I would say, build that community of practice, because you need to strengthen that base level at the community level so that the evidence starts emerging from the ground level, bottom up. Hafiz talked about top down being. So we need to somehow bring about a marriage of this top down and a bottom up approach. And for that to happen, you need to create a community of practitioners, because how will that grounded evidence really feed into the planning process or the policy development process? And for that, there is, when we say a community of practitioners, we need to really bring together a lot of these NGOs, the government officials, the technology suppliers, you name it. All of them should be working together, because what happens is because climate is becoming such a mainstream issue now, the solution to, for example, climate and health nexus can only be brought about if different sectoral people are sitting together and then trying to find out solution. And that can only emerge if all these stakeholders are working together. So we do need to provide that platform where they come together, they share their experiences learning, there's a peer-to-peer learning, but also a platform where you can convert some of these tacit knowledge emerging from the grounded and also for loss and damage, and why I'm calling loss and damage, but we also need to cover adaptation. But at the ground level, let's call it comprehensive risk management. For that to happen, you really need a lot of rapid experimentation because there can't be one-size-fits-all approach. Like there would be need for different kinds of approaches tried out in different locations. But there's also a need to capture all of those learnings, all of those evidence from all those experiments to then come somewhere so that people know what's working where and in what circumstances, what enabling conditions made it succeed or what enabling conditions did not make it succeed. And then create a feedback loop by which it can continuously and right now, I think there's a lack, and probably I'll request Hafiz to also push for it, is there should be a way in which at the national level, the government have this constant every year or a 6-monthly or annual review process by which they are allowed to relook at their NAPs, they are allowed to relook at the NDC, so that they can, if a country started facing more severe climatic impact or different types of climatic impact, because now we know places which were experiencing flood are experiencing drought, places which are experiencing drought are experiencing flood for the same time. So we really need to bring in that feedback loop as well, so that that loop then constantly influences this planning process, and then we can think about creating capacities accordingly on all of these streams. So I'll stop there, Professor Mizan.
Yeah, thank you, Ritu. Now let us invite Janga Sadiq, who is the principal manager of DAI, a German-based think tank. You all know. Thank you, Janga.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Janga Sadiq, and I'm leading the Climate Ambition Support Alliance, which is supporting. Its objective is to build the capacity of young negotiators, of vulnerable negotiators in the LDCs in particular, and reduce some of their challenges. So we focus more on the negotiator side. And some of the key challenges that they're facing is, I'm just going to keep it a little bit short because of the time. So I'll just keep it a little bit short. So some of the key challenges of the negotiators are facing that we're working with is they're so overwhelmed with when they arrive at COP, and most of them are the young negotiators, so it's their first COP, and they're so overwhelmed with the complex process, they don't really know which events or which meetings to prioritize. They don't have the right skill set to basically, just the soft skills for negotiations, feeling confident enough to sit in these negotiations. And some of the technical know-how that we've talked about and you've mentioned as well, so just to be able to lead them, because most of these negotiators lead several negotiation tracks, and they're very overwhelmed with the different negotiation tracks that they're leading, and we're trying to help them with building their technical know-how so they feel more confident leading these negotiations, and just give them a little bit of hand-holding. I think that's always lacking a little bit. And so how we are trying to address that is we're working with organizations such as IID and ICAT who develop very good training programs to support these young negotiators, female negotiators, and who basically build their confidence. And it is so important. We've been working with a few negotiators who've come here, and they're from the LDC countries, and they're all alone, like they're really lost. And they were asking me how we can connect them to other negotiators, although they came here with a delegation, and they didn't know like who to connect with and how we can help them, how to understand how to navigate the different meetings and events. And so that's made me realize how important our program is, and how important the work is that we do. But what I've also realized is that a lot of these countries, a lot of the LDCs don't really know that programs like CASA exist. And what we are trying to do, why we also attend COP, is to make countries aware of that, to make countries speak to delegations, speak to organizations, that programs like this exist, and we need to ensure that delegations or LDCs can access this fund and can access the support that we provide, and young negotiators can access the trainings that we provide as well, and feel confident and build that institutional knowledge they can transfer back to their countries when they go back, basically. So what happens next? So we're working out different training programs to support that. And yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions today about the program if you have any. And I'm going to stop here just in cautious of time, but happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janga, for sharing your thoughts on the technical difficulties, barriers. Now let me invite Dr. Sumaya Salim. She serves as the advisor on climate change program in the Sajida Foundation, a foundation which is doing excellent community works. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and yes, wonderful to be here as part of this panel on capacity building. So I'm also going to keep it very brief, but just touching on two key things. One is, before I talk about the work, so I wear two hats. I'm also a professor at a university, and one of the things, and we have a research think tank there, and one of the things that we're really trying to address in terms of capacity building is even the curriculum that exists on teaching climate change and all its complexities and multidimensional aspects. So we're working with 3 other universities in Bangladesh, well, including ourselves, on looking at the existing curriculum, which is still very much northern focus. So how to bring in that global south, not just the global south. So obviously with case studies on what's happening on the ground, but addressing all these aspects, climate finance, loss and damage, what really needs to be in the curriculum, not only for the education part, but bringing in external actors. So, we try and bring in negotiators, we try and bring in NGOs who are working, government, to teach the students so that their capacity is built, as they come out into the workforce and join this. So that's one. The other one is as advisor to Sajida Foundation's program. Here, what I'm trying to do, again, Sajida Foundation's main focus, big on health, mental health, poverty alleviation, but as we know, climate change permeates through all of that, intersects with that. So how do you build their capacity to, so they might learn about adaptation within their livelihoods program, but now, if loss and damage is something they need to incorporate, or even this nexus with health and climate change, how do you build their capacity? So one of the ways we're doing this is, again, with ICAD, these short courses, where that is geared towards development practitioners, because they're not going to be like the students going to university, but so building in this really key focus courses, which, again, thanks to ICAD, they have attended some of those, but again, more of these needs to happen. So universities, think tanks needs to come together to, really design some of these knowledge to build capacity, on NDCs, on NAP, how to, integrate all of that into their existing development programs. And the last one is community. Again, so important. We work so much on the ground, and it's to build their capacity, not only, as you said, to get the knowledge, but how do you bring their knowledge into this knowledge platform and of capacity building as well. So I'll stop there, but happy to share more details.
Yeah. Thank you, Samia. Now let me invite Dr. Amadou Chige, who is a professor at the Anta Diop University in Dakar.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the floor. So I will be brief. So just to add that on, we all know that in fact the capacities drive the development, and what is happening in our countries and these multi-challenges, we know all the challenges of funding, challenges of human resources, limited human resources, the challenges of social need of social protection for the most vulnerable people in the world. Needs, of course, to have a real strategy, and this strategy should not be, couldn't be really shaped if we don't really think about a real dialogue between all the actors. So I want just to push on having really a kind of multi-actor platform. We have experience on that. We just in 1 year before, for example, in Senegal, during the preparation of the National Adaptation Fund, for the first time, what we did is really have a small program, research program. It was a knowledge production program. So what was happening is that we organized ourselves as consortia, sectors. And in every consortia, you have academics who was really driving and during cycles working on some research questions, and those questions comes from the ground, from policymakers, from the local governments, from the NGOs, from the population, etc. So, and of course, these days, all the results and the research was collaborative. In fact, it's what we call at some time the co-production of knowledge. Of course, as you understand, it was done as you cannot do that and really pick the most important results on that if you don't have time. So what is necessary, I think, is if you do that kind of experiment, sometimes you need to really put that at scale, national scale, regional scale, or at even global scale. And also, you need some kind of long-term program. So it was a real short-term program. The second example I want to give before finishing is what we are doing these days with our colleagues of Bangladesh doing on one research project called Strands. What is the idea for us is to really, again, build knowledge and try to provide solutions for loss and damage with the academics, the local population, and the government. So, in fact, my message would be to try to organize those kind of platforms at national levels, but of course, we need also to really have these South-South more strong partnerships. I think there's somebody who mentioned the LUG program, but I think that we need really to think about in this lot of damage how to really have this opportunity to set up these knowledge production programs that can really support, again, the policy making, that can support also the national policies formulation, that can support the implementation, and even the daily operations. What we see is that usually in our countries, the planning and the daily, the planning, long-term time planning, 5 years, 10 years, are not totally necessary. Feeling with the daily operations and for all the year-to-year budgeting. So at least what we can do is also to put the knowledge production and also the MRV and the evaluation inside. And it's where you need, again, the universities, where you need also, again, the knowledge production system to be efficient and more involved. Okay, I will stop there because I know that we don't have time.
Thank you. Thank you, Amadou. Now, we don't have much time for question and answer session. I know you have lots of questions. But before that, Honorable Minister, let us invite you just to share your thoughts very shortly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, boss, professor, and the panelists. I want to thank you very much for your insightful and experiences you are sharing. Somalia is one of the countries which who are dealing with very severe impacts of the climate change, and now itself we are in the middle of the El Nino effect, which has affected a large portion of this Somalia, which is three almost states. We have 5 states and the federal territory or the city. So almost it has affected more than 2 million people, which has fled from their houses, no food, no clothes. They've been affected in terms of the casualties is more than almost 100, 120, 130 probably. And they have lost all their houses, their livestock, agriculture. They have issues even in terms of when they fled from their areas, then they go somewhere which needs again to be fled because of the flooding. So there's huge impact for that. So for my ministry, which is in charge for the custodian of the National Development Plan, we have 5 pillars in terms of the National Development Plan: the economic development, the social development, inclusive politics, and justice and rule of law. And normally, the climate change used to be a cross-cutting in all pillars. So after we have seen the impact and the magnitude of the problem now, we have made the climate change and environment as an independent pillar for our National Development Plan. So we have to streamline on integrating the climate change into our national planning process, and the same time, in the same token, we need also to capacitate the different actors of the government, the NGOs, the community level, as she has explained very well, from bottom up. So I was a bit very interested in terms of capacitating the different actors and from community level to the government sector, so we can create a harmonized government and community level system that can come up with. So for us, in terms of policy level, the development plan level, we can do our job, the actors, and also the community. So that's what we were looking into. So I was very interested on this topic, just to listen the insights of the professors and the panelists to see it. So, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you very much for your team, all of you. Thank you very much.
Now we have few minutes left. So any question, comments to the panelists? Please be very short and crisp. If any question, comments? I think capacity building itself is a self-explanatory term, so not much question most probably. So then let us have a photograph with the minister. Yes.
I'll just take 1 minute. Yeah. And I forgot to mention about one thing, because something that we've launched in the name of Salim, it's called Salimul Haq Memorial Scholarship, and it is for young practitioners. We are not looking at postdoctoral PhDs there. We want to support practitioners who are on the ground, who are working on the issues of climate change, loss and damage, and we want to incubate them. When I say incubate them, connect them to a mentor so that they can come out with very powerful research and evidence that can then influence both policy making at the national level as well as international level. And there's also an award which will be, like, there are 3 prizes that will be issued in Dr. Salimul Haq's name. And we will be announcing, like, the first round of scholarship will start from April next year. So please be on the lookout, and we'll really need your support for that, like in terms of your application, in terms of your interest in that whole process. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Ritu, for sharing this. So, distinguished participants, many thanks to you all for your kind presence and passions to hear us. So thank you.